Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush show here on New Revolutionary Radio. From the Leonard School in Malden, Massachusetts, Gregg and company are here to bring a sense of ethics to your news. Whether it's politics, activism, or current events, we always seek to inform and never to deceive. Let's start the show.
All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 13 of the GreggHoush show. Tonight we have with us our special guest, Kyte, and we're going to be talking about the blockchain and the Ethereum crash from yesterday and a few other things about the future with all that stuff. And on the show with us is also our always co-host, Kayla.
You forgot to say wonderful.
Wonderful, always wonderful. I knew I was missing a word.
Yeah, always wonderful
And
co-host.
Mac, and of
Mac
course,
Daddy,
Derek.
He's back in Mac.
Hello.
He's Miggity Mac.
Executive producer over there joining us.
Yep, EP, yep.
So,
I don't really care about him.
yeah. So,
He's not as cool as other people
Mr.
like
Irrelevant.
So
Mr.
there's all
Irrelevant.
kinds of fun news today, the last few days. We're going to be talking about Turtle's
Last few
healthcare
hours.
platform, Mitch McConnell there. Of course, as mentioned earlier, the Ethereum crash from yesterday. We'll touch on Castile and cops getting off when they shouldn't.
Wow.
Like always.
Yeah.
We are
Wow.
going to talk about the Supreme Court case on partisan gerrymandering and how we're all actually scared of that one. We will probably let Kayla yell about Amazon and Whole Foods for a few seconds.
We're not going to stop you from yelling at any point
As
anyway.
she seems to have strong opinions on that one.
Loud opinions, yeah.
And
Well, all my opinions are loud first,
and
and
we'll-
then strong second.
we'll try and get through all of that, and then we're going to talk with Alex a little more about all the other fun stuff.
And
So
his book. Don't forget to plug his book.
we will plug everything.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called again? Building the
Everything.
Kite?
Alex's book is...
It's the keys to the kingdom.
And you can get that on Amazon
Yes.
and
Yeah, it's available.
Borders. Can you do it at Borders? Barnes and
Are
Nobles.
there any Borders anymore? Borders is gone.
You get at Borders,
So-
yeah.
Supposedly, it does show up at some Barnes and Nobles, according to the publisher, but I don't know about that at all.
Yeah, so if you just
But
go up to
definitely
Amazon,
right?
yeah, on
Yeah.
Amazon, Alex's name is Kyte, Kyte. So if you just put that in,
Kite
it
with
comes
the
up.
Y.
So
Yes.
let's start talking about Mitch the Turtle McConnell.
Oh God,
And,
Cecil Turtle.
Actually, that is, really
Yeah.
exactly it. So his wonderful private hidden healthcare plan that was done in more secrecy than Obamacare.
Yeah, because Obamacare was done in the public over the course of 18 months.
With a lot of Republican amendments throughout the entire thing.
24 Republican amendments.
So
that
this one
all
was
got
done-
a bill, that all got a committee hearing, that all got an open debate.
So-
involved extensive meetings and negotiations with
So McConnell care here, I guess we're subtweeting Donald at that point, because it's no longer Trump
we're
care.
either calling it wealth care, McConnell care, or McConnell don't care.
Right.
Or
There's a million
lack of
names for
care.
it.
Yeah, death wish.
Yeah.
And what's mind baffling
Can we
is
just call this one no care?
it truly is. But what's mind baffling, and I don't understand how they
It's
can
not a
sleep
thing.
at night, knowing how procedurally they're doing this. And when I was listening to Chuck Schumer earlier this week talk about like what the Democrats quote unquote were planning, or they couldn't really say that they were planning because like they really don't know what Mitch McConnell is willing to do to pass this. Like he's willing to throw out every Senate rule. And also, not just throw out Senate rules, but throw out the constitutional Senate rules to change the Senate rules to pass this within the next week.
All I know is that we had 12 white guys.
13 white guys.
13 white guys sitting in a room.
One of the white guys, apparently Ted Cruz,
In
is
like a
already
closet.
opposing his own bill that he wrote.
They were all sitting in a closet somewhere. I'm sure half of them are still in that closet, but
They're afraid of the public. They don't want to talk to anyone about this bill.
but
I wouldn't either if I'd authored it.
Yeah, it's amazing
Some
how
of you
few
got that.
people it benefits too.
Yeah,
The,
it literally only benefits the 13 people that wrote it.
yeah, well, it benefits very specifically the 1%. It's a tax cut. This entire bill is written as a tax cut for the rich at the expense of dead poor people.
Yeah, literally.
Elizabeth Warren earlier said that this is a tax cut for the rich paid for by the blood of the poor.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna kill it'll kill like thousands of people.
Absolutely.
And what's so frustrating too is that 17% of the House bill before this bill came out had an approval rating. Literally, not a single
The House
state.
bill had a 17% approval rating.
Yeah, nationwide, not a single state approved it. Of the
It's down to 16 now.
That's how bad it is. Like the states of these senators, of the very own represent states that these senators represent, don't even approve this bill.
Well, on the Republican side, it's 34%, and on the Democratic side, it's way less, which averages out to it's 16%.
Well, I think something that should be noted too is that a lot of people act like it is going to be a flat benefit to a certain group of people. But if you look at even the top 1%, most of the top 1% are not going to get a net benefit, because when you look at the major loss of jobs that are expected to come as a result of this, you're going to have a wide ripples of recession. And most people making nice six-figure incomes are still going to lose money in the long run, because it's not that these people aren't going to get health care. They're going to get all their health care in the ER, in an emergency situation.
Oh yeah,
and
because
the
it
money
brings
for
back
that,
employer
yeah.
caps too. It can bring back employer caps and lifetime caps. So even if you have a cushy job and you're making a cushy six-figure, but if your employer puts a cap on your health insurance, well, guess what? If anyone in your family gets sick, or if you get sick, and then all of a sudden you've hit your cap, now you're paying full percent.
Right, but what you're getting at is really the idea that so many people aren't going to be getting preventative care anymore, that they're going to end up only going when it's emergency situations, and they're going to be a burden on the emergency system, which they won't pay the bills for, and most of that will get written off in bankruptcy, and that actually will hurt the people that Mitch is trying to write this bill to help.
While driving up their healthcare premiums.
But the big thing is, if you look at it, there's a good strong argument for the fact that the ripples of recession we're going to see as a result of the collapse of the medical industry, this is going to decrease the incomes from a lot of people. But the people it is going to help are the people who don't need an income because they're sitting on large amounts of existing capital.
Yeah, but they want more.
Yeah,
They want lots of more.
It's going to slow
income.
down.
You
It's
can do
going to
that through
slow
capital
down the
gains.
amount of money coming in. The only money they're going to be earning at that point is going to be mostly off of interest and other things like that, and investments in non-healthcare related. If I was heavy on healthcare right now, I would definitely be moving my money somewhere else. Here we are with a brand new bill that is not brand new at all. It's just a rehash of the House bill, and it's made worse somehow. And the thing that they can't.
It's a terrible thing. It made it awful, more
Yeah,
awful.
I have no idea how you make it worse, but there it is. They've made it worse. And the one thing that, they have to fear now is not public outcry, because they don't seem to care. I mean, we watched them taking away people out of wheelchairs who were protesting today and arresting them, and dragging them out of their wheelchairs to arrest them. So they don't care about the public outcry on this one. What they do care about is how many senators on the Republican side won't vote for this bill. And they can't lose 3. They can lose 1. They lose 2, and, McConnell's going to play around with some things. They lose 3, and they're in trouble. And right now, they have 6 saying that we have some serious concerns here. We've got Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Ron Johnson, Mike Lee, Susan Collins, and Dean Heller all saying they have concerns and that things need to be negotiated. Now, Rand Paul was pressed by reporters on MSNBC earlier to actually state that he would or would not vote for this based on the negotiations. And what he had said was, there are 12 pieces to Obamacare that they care about, that need to be changed, that need to be repealed. And this only works on 2 of them, and the other 10 are just left alone. So it's not enough different from Obamacare. It's not the things that they were hoping for. So the reporters asked, well, if they get a couple more of those, will you vote for this? And he would not go on the record as stating how many more of those remaining 10 they have to knock off. But he said, look, it starts at 12. They're at 2. We need to meet somewhere in the middle. So it still sounds like a lot of these people can be brought back to the vote with some changes. However, because of the way McConnell and friends did this, there's a week before they want to vote for this. And that's not enough time to make that substantive of changes. So I don't actually see this passing. I really don't.
There's also the split between Collins and Heller on the one side, who think that, the House bill was awful and was going to endanger their chances of re-election. And on the other side, you have Ted Cruz and Ron Johnson and Mike Lee and Rand Paul, and they're all saying that the problem isn't that, it's too horrible of a bill because all these people are going to get kicked off of healthcare. They're still mad that someone's going to get healthcare. So you have the two opposite sides of the Republicans in the Senate, where one group can't be satisfied without outright just alienating the other.
Yeah, and also, I think it was Nancy Pelosi. She made a comment. She's like, Mitch McConnell will only bring up this to vote if he either knows that they have the votes, or he doesn't give a shit if they have the votes. Which kind of begs the question, like, which one is this? Like, is Mitch McConnell only doing this as fast as he can because he knows it's just going to get dead in the water and he can move on? Or do they have the votes and all hell is supposed to break loose?
Well, the one thing that I will say for Mitch McConnell, and this is not praise, it is merely fact. I mean, you can dislike him, and I believe everyone should. He is a horrible human being with horrible opinions, views,
he's a nasty
politics.
It's disgusting. He's a turtle, and that's kind of an insult to turtles.
Yeah, it is. But he is very politically savvy. This, he can go through this level of thing that he's going through right now and still get reelected without question. Like, nothing seems to be in his way. He seems to have that his politics are just amazingly thought through on his end. And so while I hate his politics and I hate everything he does, if he pulls this to vote quickly, we're going to, I don't know if it's the next day, a week, or 5 years from now, we're going to be able to look back and say, well, wow, how did he pull that off? Whether it was because he wanted it off the table as quick as possible, or whether he knew they were about to get it through and it was going to work. Either way, we're going to have some more proof come through that tells us, holy shit, McConnell again, because his politics are solid. I hate the man, but the guy is politically savvy. He is really good at what he does. Well,
he's like 103
I'm not
years.
going to comment on a senator dying.
No, but he is so old.
Whether I am positive or negative on that one.
He is so old.
Where are his constituents is the question. Like,
he's outlived them all. They don't even know how terrible he is because they're not old enough to vote yet. That's how old he is.
So the thing about this bill, too, is I think it mirrors a lot of what we're seeing in the executive branch, which is that a lot of people are picking fights that they don't care if they win or lose, simply to be seen being willing to fight the fight. It's the person who on the first day of being in jail fights the biggest, scariest person and doesn't care if he wins or loses because nobody else is going to mess with them, right?
Well, that's prison lingo. You always punch the biggest person in the room. That way, no one fucks with you.
Yeah.
Or, you do like I did. You go in and someone who is the biggest person comes over, stands next to you, and then goes and punches the next biggest person for you and says if anyone touches him, they've got me to go through.
That's the Paul Ryan way, is that you just pay someone else to do your work for you.
Exactly. That's, Yeah, so you're right. We see a lot of this going on, especially with Trump, with all of his campaign promises that he hasn't come through on, his basic response at his rallies is, we tried, but look at all this other stuff we got. And everyone kind of forgets about the we tried part and then focuses on the second thing he said at his rallies because they're his fans. But he just says we tried, and it's like, well, so you didn't accomplish anything you said you were going to accomplish.
But it's all Obama's fault and the Dems' fault. And there's someone else is at fault. That's why he didn't get to do everything. But he's going to do this other thing.
This is hard. I don't know if you know this, but this is hard.
Yeah, no one knew how hard healthcare was.
Who could have seen that?
Well, the thing, too, is that, the way that these people kind of diverge from a lot of the Republicans we've seen in years past who have pushed similarly extreme things through is that they don't care about actually having the credibility of people who are informed. Like a great example is when Trump goes to visit the coal mining town. He promises he gets all their jobs back. He goes and meets the coal mining person. He talks with him. The coal mining person there's no money. I'm not getting the jobs back. Stands up for the press podium, says, I got all their jobs back. The mics fall, and everybody's like, no, you didn't. And you can go online. Everybody says, no, you didn't. But it's the lack of care. Well, with this, it's like they are not trying to hide the fact that they're writing law without anybody being involved. They're not trying to hide the fact that it's terrible. And it's the disregard for how anybody else actually feels about it.
They aren't actually representing the people like they're supposed to.
And there's there's this sense of they should get used to us not, which is dangerous, I feel.
That is an interesting way to look at it. Like the fact that he might be pushing so hard with this one because they just don't care at all, and they want to kind of, I don't know, I guess prove that to us, that like it literally doesn't matter how angry you all are with us, we can still do whatever we want. Like if that's in his head, that's scarier than anything. I mean, at all. Like, holy crap.
At the same time, though, it seems like they don't really care, like, even about what the other branch of Congress thinks. Like, they don't seem to be worried about passing something. The Senate bill is not the same as the House bill in ways that are pretty fundamentally incompatible. In order to try and, like, reconcile them, they're going to piss off someone, and it's going to be someone in the Republican caucus, and it's either going to be someone in the House, the Senate, or both. Like, they don't seem to care that, oh, we got something through the House. Who cares if the Senate is willing to accept it? Oh, we got something through the Senate. Who cares if the House will pass it? They don't even care about whether the other branch of Congress, never mind the American people.
They don't care about anything but taking away healthcare. That's like the bottom line is that the Republicans just want to strip American healthcare away from people for no reason other than to show how big their dick is. That is like, that's what it comes down to, is they just want to, like, they basically want to take away something because Obama gave it to them, and God forbid they have actual healthy voters to vote for time and time again. And the fact that it's like, it's just the human thing to do is to take care of people.
I'm utterly surprised that we're this deep into a talk of healthcare, and our unbelievably liberal Kayla over here hasn't brought up, single payer, Bernie.
Well, because that's not the argument right now. The argument, I mean, first of all, I think we should have universal healthcare. I mean, that first and foremost, like, we're the only major first world country in the Western Hemisphere to not have it, and we're
pretty much the only functioning democracy to not have it.
I don't know if we're functioning. Functioning is a high word.
Really.
That is a strong word.
Strong word. There you go.
But at the same time, this is going to devastate communities. I mean, it's not only communities, states, West Virginia will be destroyed by this because not only does it rip away jobs, because you've got whole states like Kentucky, West Virginia, thousands of jobs were created by the ACA. It will take away something like 40% of opioid treatment. Guess what? West Virginia is devastated by the opioid crisis. So it's like, not only will you not have jobs,
there are towns in West Virginia right now that are losing upwards of 15 people a day in single towns.
And that's not a low. That's a low number.
And but we're talking towns that have less than 5,000 inhabitants losing 15 people a day right now in West Virginia to the opioid crisis.
Here in Massachusetts, we have a huge. We're losing people at extraordinary rates. Like, we're one of the highest, and we've got a lot of people.
That's how me and Kayla actually reconnected at the funeral of one of our friends who passed that way.
Yeah, and it just sucks that it's like this bill, they're saying and their whole talking points are we want to provide care, not coverage. Because what's the point of having coverage if you can't get care, which is an actual talking point that you'll hear for the next 7 days. Well, guess what? They're actually stripping away all of it. They're not just stripping away care, they're stripping away coverage. They're stripping away care because they're going to defund the care that you can get it from. And now you're going to have whole states that are just going to be demolished from this. And there was on Pod Save America, quickly when I was listening to it on the way here, she was kind of spewing off some facts. And one of the facts was that this will affect 64% of all births, all of them, regardless of what your class is and what your economic status is and what your race is. All births will be affected by this. Oh, I thought they were the party of pro-life.
No, they're definitely going to be killing a lot of people if they pass this bill. Some interesting facts are that the Senate bill offers just $2 billion in 2018 for mental health and substance abuse and treatment. And Harvard Health Economics professor Rich Frank estimates that over the next 10 years, it will require $183 billion to actually fight this fight and support these people. And so I think there's a slight disconnect with these numbers.
Funny enough, that $2 billion was Mick Mulvaney's math error. So
Right.
They're not even really counting it.
Right. But what that really tells us is they
don't give a
literally don't care.
Well, I mean, Karen Handel with the John Offsess runoff, like for the tangent. I mean, there was a part in when they were debating, she sat there and said on camera, because he had said like he believed in a livable wage. And she goes, "This is the fundamental difference between liberals and conservatives. I don't believe in a livable wage." Which is first of all, what the fuck? Second of all, you just told all of your constituents who voted for you, mind blowing, you don't believe or care whether people live or die.
Are her constituents actually paying attention though? Usually not on that side. Like,
well, they actually had large turnout. They just happened to have
right.
more.
They show up to the events to like mingle.
No, they had a large voter turnout. They just happened to have more Republican voters.
How did they not
right,
get
but
it,
that's
though?
not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they show up.
Because you still have people that don't understand that the ACA and Obamacare. Like, that's why they don't get
It's literally just talking points, though.
No. What she's saying is actually like there are people who say, well, I want to keep the ACA, but let's get rid of Obamacare.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But
they don't understand exactly.
The ACA is Obamacare.
They don't understand the fundamentals of anything. It's just the talking points that sound good, and that's all they're focused on.
Literally.
But they've really mastered that at this point. They've mastered that with their constituents, and they have full control over them at this point. It's almost like a mind control.
Yeah, they don't listen to outside sources of information. So, they'll believe whatever they're told by these sources.
Kind of cultish a little bit, too, yeah.
So
the Fox machine.
We're going to be hearing a lot about this over the next week, and we're definitely going to revisit it on next week's podcast. But for now, I mean, when you look at all this news and when you look at everything that you see here, all this is going to do is give huge tax breaks, so it doesn't even pay for itself to the rich, and it's going to kill a lot of the poor through all of the Medicaid cuts. And what's interesting is if the rich people who are currently lobbying for and helping to fund this happening actually were looking at the long game, these tax breaks are not going to help them because of all of the, as Alex puts it, recession this is going to drive. So in every possible way, this is horrible, and there is no winner. Like, you look at this and you think lobbyists and everyone else have been pushing for it because they see a way that this helps. But this literally doesn't even help the people they're trying to help, like the people they're setting up to win off of this. So it'll be interesting to see what they actually come up with over the next week.
There's also a website that's really important right now. It's called TrumpCare10.org, and it highlights the 10 states in which the Republican senators are the most, vulnerable. And so it outlines. So it's like, go to TrumpCare10, flood these people's inboxes, these phone calls, and they have like staffer web emails. Like we need to, like, we don't have a lot of time. We only have 7 days, and that they're going to want to push this to a vote before the July 4th recess. So,
we'll put a link to the site to that.
All hands on deck.
We'll put a link to that on the website. We'll put it out on the Twitter, Facebook, everything else. We'll make sure that happens tonight before we're done here. So just in case anyone didn't hear it, they'll see it. So, let's move on from this because we could keep going, but we're going to start rehashing things, and we'll know a lot more next week. I mean, we'll know exactly what happened, how it went. So let's talk about a few other things. I mean, I'd love some opinions here. Philando Castile, he is dead, and he's dead because he was black and a legal gun owner.
He was murdered.
And he was murdered by a cop who was scared. A cop who did not in any way react properly, did not react with his training, did not do what he should. And if you actually watch the videos and you hear the testimony of the passenger in the vehicle, and all the video that was shot there, it's very clear that this officer panicked. And while the jury has, the courts, they have to prove that the cop actually was, scared for his life. The thing they don't have to prove is whether he was justifiably scared for his life, it seems. Because while I do agree that this coward was scared for his life, I do not believe he was justifiably scared for his life. And this is scary because...
Well, the problem is the Supreme Court over the years, and actually in the most recent years, they have made it, basically they have given what's called, it's like presumed immunity for police officers. And I remember there was a couple of there was a Supreme Court case a couple of years ago, and I think it was out of Tennessee, and an officer pulled over a car and for a headlight out, and he ended up searching the car and finding drugs. However, in the state that they got pulled over in, it was not a citationable offense to have a taillight out. So they fought it. They brought it away to the Supreme Court, and they basically was fighting like, you can't. I mean, the cop can't just make up laws or what they think is illegal and then arrest people over it. And I remember Scalia, I think, wrote the opinion, and he was basically saying, like, you know, if the cop thought what he was doing was justified and illegal, then we have to give them presumed immunity. So it doesn't really matter what a cop says or does, as long as he says whatever he wants. They win in the end. And the Supreme Court has set it up time and time again to give basically cops, you know, all the free range.
Well, something that I think hasn't been touched on enough when speaking about Castile is why police officers want to wantonly pull people over, and why police officers have such a high involvement in so many other people's lives. And it's the development of programs like the stop and frisk, and the development of things such as civil forfeiture, where police officers will have hand credit card scanners. They can max out your credit card because the money on your credit card loan is clearly from drugs. And it's like, while these are entirely tangential things, it's the fact that we encourage people who are armed and who are arguably quite scary to stop every person, get involved in every affair. If you ask the police to march through every house and make sure nobody had a bomb in the middle of their living room tomorrow, I assure you a lot of really bad things would happen. And I think that we act like it is harmless to ask police to intervene in everybody's daily lives constantly, when in fact their habits, their form, and their intimidation it picks a fight, and they know it, and that is why they're afraid.
Now, we have to couch this with the simple fact that not every cop is bad. And that not every cop would have done this, and that not every cop agrees with civil forfeiture. There are many, in fact, that are good. And you know, this is some of my audience isn't going to like this, but the majority of them are actually on that good side. It's not the largest majority, but it is the majority of them. The problem is they don't do anything about the bad ones.
Because the system protects the rest. And
the
last thing you can do is talk against a fellow
you can't
brother.
talk against a fellow cop. So
there will actually be retaliation from police for appearing to have crossed the blue line.
Well, what I'm saying is, I don't think it is so easy to point the finger at any one person and to act like it is a personal failing, as it is to agree that it is irresponsible to design a system where we put everybody in such harm, in harm's way from interaction with each other, and expect nothing to happen. Like, you don't put you don't put wolves and like baby mice in the same cage and expect nothing to happen.
Yeah, but the system is designed for this. We set the system up for cops to be basically Big Brother, and it's kind of been like that from the get. And also we've also had the system where the cops are supposed to, you know, troll black communities, black and brown communities. That's been a system for a long time. That's been the system, and for a very long time. Now we need people, because the thing is, you know, you don't just have white cops shooting black people. You have black cops shooting black people. You have brown cops shooting black people. You have Hispanic cops shooting black people. The one common denominator is you got black men who are the most vulnerable to all cops. And that's the system. And it was designed that way. And I heard a lot of people, on my social media, look at this case and think, and had a glimmer of hope, not hope, but felt that maybe justice might prevail, because this was such an egregious act, and it was such a horrendous act of like just unjustifiable violence from a black on a black man for no reason, absolutely no reason, and it was so clear as day there was no reason. And yet still...
Well, the reason was very clearly that this was not a person, Yanez was not a person who should have been given a gun, should have been given a badge. This is a person who proper screening and training should have quite clearly identified him as someone who did not have the Constitution to be interacting with the public in this way.
Yeah, and that begs the question, what is cop training? I mean, because it varies so different to state, and like they're not, and it's not even, and like they don't even know the laws half the time. Like, They're just told, here's probable cause. It's a black person. Go get it.
Right, but then you also have, people moving around. Like the first week I was in Massachusetts, I got pulled over by a cop and I hadn't done anything. I literally had done nothing to give probable cause. I turned on my phone to record, and I asked when he got up there, like, what did I do? And he said, oh, you didn't do anything. And I said, then why did you pull me over? And he said, because I ran your plate. And I said, why did you run my plate? I've never lived anywhere where that's legal unless I give you probable cause. That's an invasion of privacy, sir. And he said, I understand that. I've actually been a police officer in a couple other states where I wouldn't legally be allowed to do that. But in this state, the state actually owns that plate. You don't. It's our property, so we can look at it.
Yep.
And I said, so with no probable cause. And some of their
technology does it automatically, too.
So with no probable cause, you were able to invade my... And I had this conversation. I said, so with no probable cause, you were able to invade my privacy. And he said, yes. And so I pulled you over to ask you a couple questions about, just stupid shit on my license. And I was totally fine. I hadn't actually done anything, nor did he even have any reason after looking at my record to pull me over. It's just I have a very long record, and I'm fine with that. But I wasn't currently doing anything, and I had nothing outstanding. He was just being an ass. But I did not know he had the right to do that. And I had just moved from a state where that would have been an actionable offense where I could have actually sued the city for him doing that. It was an invasion of privacy in every other state I'd actually lived until moving here. It was crazy to me. But so what you have is such inconsistent laws about your interactions with police and what they're allowed to do on a state by state and sometimes city by city, but it's state by state basis.
I mean, the Supreme Court keeps chipping away at your rights and giving the police more rights to do whatever they want. Like, the fact that it's like a cop can just say, I had reasonable to suspect, or I felt in fear of my life, or, they were acting suspicious. It's like, that gives them power to do virtually anything these days.
It's also like, if you look at a lot of other countries like England, the police are heavily trained in de-escalation measures, and that is your job as a police officer. You de-escalate things. In the United States, you do not receive training for de-escalation, and in fact, you are encouraged to put your own safety and the safety of your team above any attempt to de-escalate. As soon as anything bad happens, out comes the gun.
So there are many cities, counties, and states where that is absolutely true. I will say that Boston specifically has run de-escalation training. The quality of it and, the fact that it's pretty recent that they started doing it is who knows the quality and who knows why it took this long. But they have started to run some de-escalation training. And so there's hope in some areas, but I still don't have much hope. There's a much bigger set of problems here. And for me, I mean, in this case specifically, in the Castile case specifically, it starts long before this stop. It starts with this person, Geronimo Yanez there, being actually given a gun and a badge. He, obviously does not have the Constitution. He is an outright coward who panicked because a black man owned a gun and it was in the car. He told him to get his license. Like, he told him to reach for something, and then he reached for that something, and then he got scared for his life.
And this is shot him in front of his own child and his girlfriend. I mean,
this is just... This person should never have been allowed to be a cop out in the public. Put him in a desk, I don't care, but don't put him in a cop car. Don't put him in a cruiser, right? So I think part of the solution here isn't, obviously, please stop shooting black people who aren't doing anything. And even the ones that are, de-escalate.
Yeah.
Damn it.
You can't. We've ruled a long time ago. You can't shoot a fleeing suspect. Even if they're guilty of a crime, you still can't fucking shoot them.
Yeah.
You gotta convict them first. And even death penalty is off the table in a lot of states.
Yeah. So what was needed in this case, in my opinion, is personally better screening for who actually became a police officer in that city. They obviously, one, don't have good de-escalation training. Two, don't have any screening on whether you are someone who has the Constitution to be outside with a gun. Now, I will say that's kind of hard to test for because, you put someone up in a video game environment kind of like they do where they have the big projection screens and they run you through all the cases of when to shoot, when to not shoot, and you've got the split second, do I shoot decisions, and all that fun stuff. with certain people, I can see them performing perfectly fine there, but then in the real world, doing what this guy did. So I don't know what the answer is to actually screen these people, but that has got to be a thing. And you know what? I think personally, there should be a re-review of every officer in every police force in the country for that specific screening. Do you have the Constitution to be outside with a gun? Because we're sick of people getting shot who don't deserve it.
I agree.
Yeah, so I mean, there's not really much more to be said here. He was let off. I mean, he's a free man, and Castile's dead.
Yeah, he joins the ranks of everyone else who gets away with murder.
He does, and the fact that a lot of those people are cops is disturbing.
And the fact that the system that allowed those cops to be out there in the first place is still in place. The same people who qualified them and certified them to be out there with zero situational awareness are still there, certifying and qualifying people to be out there. That's the really disturbing part, that nobody's really taking action on that portion. They're focusing on the cop, which is a tragedy, but focusing on the systems and really doing some reparations there.
There's also no real accountability. Like, even if a police officer somehow loses their job for one of these incidents, which seems to be distressingly rare in its own right, they then just go over to another town, sometimes in the same state, and get a job with another police force.
Yep.
Doing the same shit.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be surprising to me if this officer got another job, but a fair amount of them still make mistakes near this level and get work.
Well, the Tamir Rice cop who shot Tamir Rice, he was let go of a former police station for having large counts of complaints against him, and he was able to just willy-nilly walk into another police station and get a job.
It's amazing. It's amazing. There's seems to be no database, and you figure that would be the one thing you'd have a database
and then
for.
the only thing he got fired for was because he made a clerical error on his resume. So murdering a 12-year-old, completely okie dokie in the Cleveland police officer, but lie about what DA award you won at whatever Middlesex Community College, then you're gonna get in a lot of trouble.
So that's where we are on that one. I mean, I wish I could say there'd be more resolution next week because this cop was gonna have something done, or there'd been big announcements about sweeping changes due to this, but that's just not the world we live in.
Yeah, no, Jeff Sessions literally is trying to block some of these sweeping changes. They put a whole bunch in place in Baltimore at the final end of Obama's last administration, and Jeff Sessions went to court. In a federal court, actually said no, they have to put these in place. These are good. Baltimore police wants them in place, and so they're gonna go. And Jeff Sessions tried to block them, failed luckily, but I mean,
that is the world we live in. Dopey from the Seven Dwarfs there is trying to block us putting in the proper protections for black men in high minority cities there. That's a wonderful thing. So let's move on from that horrible ending to another thing that could be amazingly good or horrendously bad for the entire nation. And that's a Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court's going to hear a case on partisan gerrymandering. This is the Gill v. Whitford case. And what this is about really is, Wisconsin and a Republican governor with Republican majorities in both state houses, hiring a private law firm to redraft the entire state's map, the electoral map there. So once they were done with it, the end result was that Republicans would get a 54-seat majority even if they only garnered 48% of the statewide vote. And so this is a bad thing they did, and we need to find ways to stop this. Earlier, before we started recording there, Kayla had a pretty strong opinion on this one, that it's scary because it could set a precedent and it could set the wrong one. And right now, at least we have, the ability to have each individual court kind of decide. So this could be one of those where we get to the Supreme Court with a case we hope wins, but we lose, and it's really bad for us. So I'd love you to kind of explain, what that means, what this case is really about.
Well, it's scary because, the Supreme Court has already kind of ruled that, other gerrymandering has been illegal, yet the Republicans still go forth with it, even though time and time again they've been shut down. Like I said before we started recording, I said I feel like this might be a 5-4 majority in favor of the Republicans, just because you've got such a conservative basically court right now. You've got Clarence Thomas, you've got Alito, you've got was it Gorsuch, who's now on the bench. So I just see this going a 5-4, and if this does favor in the Republican side, this not only just means that Wisconsin's going to be gerrymandered, but this is going to mean the likes of like Trump forever. And I mean, then if we can't, like, Democrats can't win already, and it's gonna take the whole country in a whole other way. And if you got the Supreme Court ruling, where do you go? You can't fight.
It's true that although I'm not so certain that I'm quite as concerned about this particular case as you are, the courts have been fairly unkind to gerrymandering efforts recently, and some of those decisions have been pretty much unanimous. So I don't know that the risk of them deciding the case what I'd consider to be the wrong way is quite as high as you're afraid. Although I can certainly understand why someone would be concerned about the possibility, even if it's, not more likely than not.
I guess my main concern is just that, like, I know that if you got the right argument in front of them, they're going to go very conservative. And Wisconsin is also a state that has successfully not only tried to boot out a terrible governor, but reelected him after they booted him out. So it's like you've already got a very strong Republican state, and in these law firms that scout these cases as well do a very great job, or not very good job, sorry, at finding the perfect case to bring to the court to get their way. So it's like if they've got this case in their barrel, like I only know that they've been waiting for this case, and they have a perfect argument, and they've into ticking away into the side of the bricks for like years to come. So it's like I can only see this being like, boom, this is our moment.
Yeah, I just mean, like, for example, there was the North Carolina redistricting case that they decided 8-0. Like, that's hard to, that's going to be a fairly high barrier for someone to overcome if they're going to be bringing an argument to try and argue basically the exact opposite direction. Not only do they have to swing, enough conservative judges, but they literally have to swing half the court because all of them already sided against that. That seems like it might be a tough barrier for a litigant to argue.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I mean, I
obviously.
really do. I fear because we have such a conservative bench, and God only knows like what they've been like waiting for. So
It's true. I definitely can't say I'm entirely free of trepidation on this case, but I mean, I just looking at the recent cases where they've done similar things and like decided them by huge majorities, I feel like I'm fairly confident in the direction. I just, don't feel 100%.
yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath.
Right.
But
There you go.
well, we'll have to wait. We'll literally have to wait and see on this one. Is that's not to be decided on this session? I think they're bringing it next session.
As I understand things, it'll be next session.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we got some time at least. We got some time.
I mean, I don't know what time is gonna buy us, though. I mean, it's not like we can really sway the Supreme Court much.
But I mean, like, if they've ruled on it like before like October or like before like August, and all of a sudden then they had like all that time to gerrymander the shit out of all the states for the 2018, like
Right.
At least like we can like kind of save some space in between the elections.
Fair enough. So there you go. Partisan gerrymandering at the Supreme Court, and we're gonna finally get some kind of an answer from the top. And we hope it goes good, because it's scary if it doesn't. And so let's move on to the Georgia special election.
Yikes!
While having my favorite kind of political one-liner, vote your ass off.
That's such a great line.
Still lost.
Yep.
Still lost.
Yep.
And of course, there's all sorts of arguments as to why. I mean, the obvious one, it is kind of a Republican district, so the odds of winning were really against them anyways. But I'm gonna pile on. Democratic leadership has shown their inability to actually win races for years now. No, I'm sorry. Under Pelosi, no matter what anyone has to say, there are over 30 lost seats, multiple lost governorships. Under her,
Well, there's over 400 lost Democratic seats since Obama.
Sure, but all of this is under Pelosi.
No, because Obama would have been the actual party leader for those years. But my question is this really a Democratic leadership issue?
Not
because when
really,
you go
because
into
he's not running things where she's on the ground actually making the
but I mean,
decisions
if
and running
if you're
things.
a president, you're technically the party head. You're,
You're just not actually running the day-to-day like she was, so it was her who's responsible.
But I mean, at the same time, is this really a Democratic Party leader's responsibility to go into she also has her own district. So, but is
Her own district, Silicon Valley, by the way. So she only works for the rich anyways.
And
as much as we hate all the Republicans that work for the rich.
I was all for delaying her vote as confirming her as minority leader. I do think we need a shake up because it's like obviously things need to change. But I don't know if this is definitely the race in which you can really point at Nancy Pelosi because it's like she wasn't running.
Well, I don't think it's just this race. Who cares about one race? It's all the races.
But everyone's bringing up her again as a point. It's like, no, we shouldn't have given her party minority leader again when they did.
Correct.
It's like, but we can't really point at this race.
You can't point at this exact one, but you can start to say that there has to be one that is the straw that breaks the camel's back. There has to be that one.
Pattern.
Yeah.
And this one being the most expensive race for House in history could very well fit that bill as the one that finally convinces enough of the people that she needs to go. And, she's great at fundraising. I mean, they raise a lot of money, as we can tell. The Democratic Party's great at fundraising. They're horrible at using that. Like, there was a huge argument online for some reason about their use of their data sciences and their databasing and all that other stuff just a few weeks ago. And people actually involved with the Hillary campaign complaining that the Democratic side doesn't have anywhere near the technology that the Republicans have. And when it comes to their databases, their data sciences, their analysis, their use of all that. And then the people who actually do that for the Democratic Party coming back and yelling at them that our stuff is great.
And you weren't listening to us and weren't doing any of the things we told you and said you had a handle on it.
Right. And I told both of them that your technology is irrelevant as we keep seeing nothing but Republican wins everywhere. And when it comes down to special elections, when it comes down to a 51-49, it's the Republicans in the 51 almost every time for decades now. So I don't care how good your data is. Data is only as good as the results, and your results suck.
Well, what pisses me off the most is like, we do need a change, and I would be for Nancy Pelosi stepping out and getting a new face in there because at this point it's like she's got such a bad she's like the Hillary Clinton of the party now, like, and I don't think she's doing anything wrong. I just think people are just tired. I think people are tired of her.
The Democratic Party lost 63 House seats when she was majority leader and in 2010 and lost more than 900 races at the state level.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's time. But at the same time, like, I wouldn't say she's the fault. I just think.
No, the entire leadership is the problem. And not just her. There's literally 30 people that need to go.
Then what gets me so disheartened and like gets me so frustrated is when I hear people like Cory Booker, when they sit down and they talk to Cory Booker and they say, should Jared Kushner lose his clearance after it comes out that he's lied about having these meetings with the Russians? And he's like, whoa. Maybe let's not take away his clearance just yet. And it's like, Cory Booker, we can see that they've donated money to you. This is why the Democrats are not losing, because it's like you guys are not. You're trying to walk the walk and talk a different talk at the same time, and saying, and your whole messaging hasn't changed from, well, the other guy is worse.
That is literally their sales point.
Yeah,
and that doesn't work. That's not enough anymore.
And it's not working. And it's not going to work. And it's not worked for a long, long time.
31 governor's mansions belong to the Republicans now. And the Democrats...
Including a
literally
very deep blue state here in Massachusetts.
Yep. And I think they hold it here, too. I mean...
Oh, God. They for some reason, that man is impenetrable. And he's a terrible person.
So I think one of the problems, too, is that... as a result of the last election, I think we've seen the Democratic Party being forced to move slightly to the right in the sense that a lot of people
So closer to center.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
it's been going to the right since the first Clinton, since Bill.
Yeah, but the problem is a lot of people who are moderates who are slightly informed, who don't really have who only really care that things work. They don't support Trump because Trump is a sexual monster. Trump does crazy things overseas for this reason, that reason. And in the modern two-party system, either you're Republican or you're Democrat. And so you have all these people come to the Democratic Party, and you look at the Democratic Party, and when you hear the words Democratic Party, one of the few things that comes to mind, other than Clinton's role in the election was the fact that they stood in shame for the entire primary election, for all the vote fraud and everything, for all the stuff that if it was not a primary election would have been like treason, right? And I think that the problem is that a lot of people see that the Democrats have lost their moral high ground because they are willing to budge on their issues in order to have more people in their party and more support. And I think in the next few years, we're going to see that either the Democratic Party needs to be willing to take a principled stance and say what actually defines them, or there's simply going to be a group of people who think that they should be the best club. And I don't think that we need that at all.
Well, I think we've already had that idea of the club of people who don't really have an ideology so much as a we want to be in charge, and a lot of that is a product of what happened to the Democratic Party in the 1970s and early 1980s when we had McGovern and Mondale both fail in that period, and then we had Carter as president, but then he lost to Reagan. We had the Reagan Democrats and all of that in the 80s, and the party perceived that they couldn't win on being the sort of champion of the left that they hadn't really strongly been, but had kind of portrayed themselves as. And then they took a hard shift to the right, and Bill Clinton was kind of the figurehead in charge of the party during that time. And so we saw that several decades ago, and it was a response to the political conditions at the time as the party perceived it.
Absolutely. It's not something. This is not just this year. This is not just last year. This has been going on for a while. When you look at the Republicans, the Democrats, you can look back, say, to the 50s up into the mid 60s. You would call anyone who was a Republican at that point, you would today call a Democrat. They definitely flipped around there.
Well, there was like Barry Goldwater, but
right. But you run into the situation where the Republicans of today take credit for what Republicans of 50, 60 years ago did, and that they're not the same party at all.
Yeah,
they're not even close. Their platforms are literally opposing. They are.
Even 30 years ago, you had a Republican Party that believed in science.
Right, but you get into the especially the mid 70s, and you start to get the parties as we know them today, on the sides that they are, the left and the right are what we consider the left and right today. And sure, it changed a lot over the last 30, 40 years, but it kind of steered in a direction. The Democrats became the left, the liberals, the progressives, and the Republicans became the party of in the background, the party of the rich and corporate.
They became like the hard right.
Yeah, and so we got those two sides, and all that really did was it kind of reinforced the false dichotomy that we live under right now, which is that either side is different than the other side, and when we're talking about the current leadership of our country, it's not really. Sure, you're going to get a slight law change here, a slight law change there, but it's not going to be that different depending on either side. You're still going to get stuff we don't like. The bill from Mitch McConnell today is only on the 12 points that really define Obamacare. Only 2 of them change. Now, they're 2 very important ones, like how you fund the damn thing and, Medicaid. But there's still only 2 of the 12 points are gone. Like, the differences aren't that large on either side other than the rhetoric.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a surprise either. You look at Obamacare, it was very similar in most of its structural details to the 1993 Hillary Care proposal, which was itself very, very similar to one that the GOP advanced around the same time.
Yep.
And both of those were either directly or indirectly based off of a proposal by Richard Nixon back in the 1970s. Actually, two separate proposals that he had.
Yep.
So you have the Democrats pushing a Republican policy as the Democratic policy, and the Republicans attacking that policy as a Democratic policy, even though 40 years ago they were advancing.
If you're paying
that
attention
exact
to
policy.
all of that what that really shows you is that the two sides are not actually, they don't really care about the things they're saying. They care about the power they're holding. So when you look at things like, say, the White House, and you look at the heads of, various offices, national intelligence, people high up in the CIA and everything, and you look at the State Department, you can actually go back to the mid-'70s and you will find half of George W. Bush's, people from Cheney to Rumsfeld, everyone in those high offices. You will find his father definitely manipulating a lot of stuff, and you will find Reagan coming into office, but with his father as VP and everyone else that I've mentioned and all the other people kind of related to that. Like, you'll run into about three families when you include the Clintons. You'll run into literally about three families, maybe a fourth, who have actually had control of all of our highest offices, literally every highest office, including the presidency, until Obama. And so you have like a dynasty of 30 years made up of just a few families who are trading power. And some of them are Democrats and some of them are Republicans. And they, in all honesty, didn't care which one of them was in power at that point, as long as one of them was in power. The idea that you actually have a choice when you're choosing Republican or Democrat is an outright lie. You are choosing to keep the exact same group of people on both sides in power. When you talk to a Republican who's actually one of their strategists, and you get in one of those, I know you and I'm shaking your hands kind of a moment, and I'm going to tell you something that I'm not supposed to say, but I know a few Republican people who actually self-identify as tricksters. Their job is to do the dirty work. And they'll tell you that their favorite person in the world, in reality, the person they love the most, is the devout, strong, left, liberal, progressive Democrat. Because that's the guy who keeps them having a job. As long as those strong, far-left liberals exist, the dirty, rotten trickster guy has a job. And it goes the other way, too. As long as the strong right exists, the people in control of the left have someone to point at and say, they're evil, give us money to run against them.
Except one side is working a little bit, it's working better for them than the other.
Well,
it's not really working for the left
right.
anymore.
So that's a kind of a problem of the party itself actually doing things. Like, I'm not saying the thing is rigged. What I'm saying is both parties exist because the other party's base hate them. And they know this, and they play into it to keep that power. The Democrats love the Republican base because that Republican base is what they use to sell to their base to get the vote. And it goes the other way too. So you have this set of power that is only in two hands, and it's, it doesn't matter which one is currently in power. I mean, I would prefer a little more progressive in power because at least they pander to the things that I care about. The right kind of panders to corporations, to the rich, they say they're working for the middle class, but they aren't. And you can just look at results there. But when you look at the left, the way they get votes is by pandering to the environmentalists, the people who care about climate change, and all that type of stuff. And so I like how the left panders more, and I like the things they have to do to earn their votes. But they're only doing it to earn their votes. They're not, most of them aren't doing it because they care. They're doing it because it's what keeps this power structure in place that keeps these two parties in power. We need, personally, and I guess there's a point to this, a strong third party. And it's near impossible to get under our current system.
So I think the problem with having a good analysis of a lot of this is the belief that there actually is power in the hands of the individual people, in that it is a power that they can exercise. If you
it's a very slow moving organism, so their power is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it indexes right back to the whole Noam Chomsky the manufacture of consent. If you want people to not question whether we should invade a country, for instance, you don't ask if we should invade the country. You ask, should we do it in this way or in that way? And you make which way you do it a controversy, and people will never question the
It's
assumption.
called choice closing.
Choice
Yeah,
closing.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sales
Choice
closing.
closing.
My father just figured out who Noam Chomsky is this year, but when he found out who it was, he didn't know how to say his name. So he's like, Kayla, I'm reading this. Well, he's not reading. He's listening to an audiobook. Because have you ever heard of Noam Chomsky?
on IRC in the 90s, from about 93 to about 98, my actual host name, my virtual host on all EFNet was Gregg at manufacturing.consent. That was my eye line. So yes, I'm a very big fan of that. And you're right. I mean, a lot of this moves at the pace of government, so they can only do so much. But that also speaks to the same problem, that it really doesn't matter which one of the two are in at this point. The momentum is going in those directions, and the individual doesn't have that much power. It's more where the money wants to go.
It's if you
Or
look,
take it.
If you look at the actions that Obama and Trump try to take the minute they came into office versus the stance they take another month down the line, the same with George W. Bush, you see that no matter how politically principled they are when they begin, it's the fact that the Joint Chiefs, the leaders of industry, and the world leaders from the other countries, they are the people who decide what is possible to be done. And we've seen Trump. He comes in, he's like, I want to get this done. I'm just going to do this. And it doesn't work. And I think that the problem is that we believe that we can vote one person in or out, or we can talk one person to being wrong and make them really unpopular. But when you change the figurehead, the people actually writing the bills, the people funding the bills, and the lobbyists who bring the research, who educate the people in the Senate, who would otherwise have no idea of anything on the ground happening, all these people remain the same no matter who you put in power. So at that point, it's a very good disguising act for all the people who will never change in administration no matter who you voted.
And even if you disregard, the people that don't change with administration, it's very important to look at who the new administration picks as their advisors. Obama came into power on a strong mandate after running a campaign talking about, all the financial crimes of Wall Street and how the economy had been blown up and we needed to do something about it. And then what happened is he came in on this mandate that he got and brought in all these bankers and other well-connected individuals as his close advisors. And so even though the actual people in these positions had changed for once, he was just bringing in from the same basic pool of people that were going to give him the same information, the same opinions, because they had a vested interest in it.
It's the same thing with Trump. When he came in, his sales pitch to the people who voted for him was he was going to, in his own words, drain the swamp.
Of course.
Drain
And
the swamp.
Then his Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, made the swamp, literally. Like that was his thing at Exxon. And everyone else he's brought in has been 10, 20, 30, 40-year veterans of D.C.
Or just billionaires.
Or just, billionaire
absolutely.
friends who he wanted to enrich.
And some of those billionaires destroyed the economy in 2008. Were the actual cause of the economic decline.
He didn't drain any swamp. He literally dredged the swamp. He brought them all up and gave them jobs in the White House.
I think he massaged the swamp a little bit. He raked
it.
it.
He dredged the swamp. He, removed some of the soil underneath, made the swamp deeper.
There was a great honest moment with him when he's speaking a short time after he's won, where somebody asked him about drain the swamp, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's a great thing to say, but I'm in power now, so it doesn't really matter. I've got you guys. It's gonna be great."
And before he said that, he was at a rally, and he was like, when I first said that, I thought it was so hokey, but then you guys loved it, so now I'm going to keep saying it.
Yeah.
So it's like he just admitted he didn't care.
He totally is fine with telling people that.
Remember, I won't lie to you. Okay, I might lie to you.
Yeah. And this is our president. There you go. So, again, it all goes back to, Alex, what you said there really rings true in that, even if the Republicans could have it for the next 10 years. The Democrats could come in and take it. all the underlying infrastructure, all the underlying people don't change. And one of the interesting things I was talking about actually here in the office a couple days ago was a friend of mine at the FTC. He is one of the technologists there. They have many, so I'm not outing him. But he came to me and said, one of the problems with the various forms of protest and activism I'm doing is it doesn't get a law on the books. You're trying to convince people, say like a Mitch McConnell, to, do something different with the laws. But they're not writing the content of these laws. They're not understanding most of the content of these laws, let alone reading it. Their staff are. And he then went on to explain to me how paragraph after paragraph of actual law on the books that's been passed by our wonderful government, he wrote. And he did this by reaching out to people working on specific bills, talking to their staffers, and having that government email address and whatnot kind of helped. But saying, look, I'm an industry expert on this specific thing that you're working on, and I know you're going to have to address this in your bill. So here's some language I've come up with to make that make sense to you. And then he sends it to them. And then they're so strapped for time and honestly, ability to do anything as staffers, congressional staffers, they copy his paragraphs into the bill and don't edit them. So just like he at that time, it told me at least 50 paragraphs of text saying exactly what he wanted had already been passed through Senate as law. And, it turns out that might be the better way to start changing things is just, abusing the system that exists in the way that he is. Although, since he has the same political kind of viewpoints as me, I'm happy he's doing it.
I mean, the lack of line item veto is definitely like a major problem. You see a lot of the really landmark legislation. You try to sit down and read like Obamacare and stuff, and you're smack dab in the middle of it. And there's a dude whose home state is getting an ice rink for $3 million. And you're like, what does that have to do with any of it?
Yeah. On the other hand, the line item veto is very dangerous because it allows the president to completely change the meaning of legislation simply by striking any line they don't like. You can literally take a piece of legislation, strike a couple of lines, and have it have almost literally the opposite effect of its original intention.
And if that needs to be revoted through Congress, I don't see the problem with.
Yeah, I mean that's basically how the line item veto can actually work. Is if the president wants to do that, then it has to go back through Congress and be revoted up in his version, with them not being allowed to make any changes to it, just yes or no. Because at that point, the president is saying, "This is the version I would pass. So if you'll pass it, then I'll sign it. Otherwise, it's vetoed." And if it worked that way, I mean, I would think that would be a very interesting thing. Although I do say that, with this current setup, I don't know that I'm the biggest fan of all of that because I don't want Trump, pumping much through at all. It's very weird because I was angry as you can get with the just obstruction, the lack of any movement on tons of bills and everything that the Republicans were forcing on Obama. They were blocking him at every step. And now with these people in power that are currently in power, and again, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I hate both parties personally. Both of them are, again, a false choice. It's a false dichotomy. You are still putting the same people in power. Just because they're lying to you and telling you that they care about the same thing that you care about, so you'll vote for them, doesn't mean it's going to change anything. Like Alex said, although not putting words in his mouth, the people underneath, the lobbyists, the money, the people who write these bills, the people who do all the research aren't changing when you vote in and out these people. So it really doesn't matter. But, now I find myself with these new people in power hoping and praying that some obstructionism and blocking and everything else can keep them from passing anything.
So it really is also about the mind share of the people in a sense that a lot of the laws on the books that people try to change back and forth every year, they don't get changed in policy, but their interpretation and the way they're enforced will change, and that does enact very serious change in the way that the country is run. And on the other hand, there are laws on the books that are new and that are old that are absurd when you read them, and people just do not enforce them. So it's very easy to get caught up in what the legal ramifications of the laws on the books say they can be, but it's also very important to look at what we just recently discussed, the issue with police and shootings and other things. There's no law in the books that says a police officer can shoot somebody because they feel like it, but it is 100% a factor of how we punish
justifiable
and how
homicide is on the books. or like is in the case law.
Right, but that's
Just it's
Yeah.
not that
justifiable isn't because I feel like it. You're gonna.
No,
die.
I know, but like there is
it
a
all
thing
about
that
interpretation.
Yeah.
It comes down to it.
It is a $5 fine to tear up azalea plants in Massachusetts. Just want to put that out there, guys. I know some of you are gonna do it.
There's 5 of us in this room. If the rest of you take your shoes off, we're currently having an orgy.
Well,
in
then,
Massachusetts.
I didn't want to say something.
Now we're getting somewhere.
But my
I'm just
shoes
saying,
have already been off.
Mine are too. Like I'm in. I mean, I'm just saying. Right, you know.
What's going on in
Is that
here?
a
But-
euphemism or what?
No, I mean, we're kind of agreeing with the fact that there are so many laws on the books that aren't enforced that are honestly just outright stupid. That yeah, I mean, of course, but you know, we started this off talking about the special election in Georgia, which we just know, you know, I mean, the Republicans win that district. That's just a thing.
They call it ruby
But-
red.
But man, did it come close? It came a lot closer, and you know, does that help? Do we think that them getting that close is a good sign for 2018, or do we think that them losing is a bad sign for 2018? Like, do we have opinions here?
Well, it was a considerably closer race than the 2016 election, general election for the House in that district. So it certainly is a good sign for the Democrats in that sense. And much like the other special elections we've seen since the election, we've seen a sizable swing towards the Democrats, which does speak well for them. These not like these are districts they should have won or even been competitive in.
Right, but you know, you're looking for a silver lining in we lost every one of them.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go to if every district in Utah were up for special election, the Democrats would lose all of them. Would you be like, man, the Democrats just can't win anything because they can't win Utah?
That is a valid point. And they also said something like special elections are like a kind of like their own breed in and of itself. And I was bumming hard when he lost because we put so much money in, and like he came so close. Like he came so close during the first election and then the runoff. But they did also say that if he didn't win the first election and went to a runoff, it would nearly be impossible for him to win. But when I saw the numbers were getting so close, you're like, maybe he can win by a percentage, maybe.
Yeah, with like 30-something% in, he was up 51-49 or something for a short period. Like there was that one glimmer of hope.
And even when they were because I was watching the count live for a little bit on CNN, and then for a small point, they did swing where he was up 51, she had 49, and like you were like, oh man, is it gonna work? Is he gonna do it? And then of course I fell asleep, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was like holding off checking my phone because I was like, if it's bad news, I don't want to see bad news. But if it's good news, I want to know.
Right, but at this point, I expect the Democrats to lose any local race if the area is even slightly red. I mean, the Democrats have only won a recent special election when the two people running were both Democrats. Like that's the state we're in.
Yeah.
You know that what is his name? National Republican Congressional Committee Communications Director Matt Gorman.
That's a lot of
Right. He is quoted as saying Democrats have a competence problem. And I got to say, in a rare moment of clarity, he got something right there. I agree with him. Other than that, though, most things that come out of his mouth, I don't.
Like, back to like the party doesn't have like a major stance, like a major like moral like position. Is like I think there's a lot of infighting because there was an article
They're
where
pushing the left away. I mean,
well,
literally,
no,
are.
We're pushing ourselves away too. We're almost dividing our own party because if you've got a lot of the hard Bernie supporters that no candidate's good enough, and you even had like there was a interview.
Well, they aren't.
Well, but at some point, the thing of a whole compromise is that both parties are going to be upset, and that's kind of what politics are. It's like you're never going to love your candidate, and it's just going to be someone good enough.
That's disgusting.
If you accept a bad candidate in order to be able to say I voted for that one, you're not helping the country.
No, but
at
I'm
all.
not saying you're accepting, but like just because John Office wasn't the Bernie moral high ground doesn't mean you can't support him. You can't try to flip a seat. Some things are going to be a push and pull. Some things are going to be a give and take. Not everything's going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
And
but
so I think
we talked about this last week about a solution for all of this. And
Oh,
that's
yeah, absolutely.
ranked choice voting and national popular
Absolutely.
vote. get both of those two things in, and you don't have to make that bad choice anymore. You can choose the one you want and then put them in order of the
And
ones
there's
you'll
no more
accept.
attack ads anymore because, like you said last week,
Well, no, people will still do that
Well, the
because the
attack
Koch
ads, but I mean,
brothers
like-
still like just think
Yeah.
that's a thing. But but yeah, I mean, so let's bring in ranked choice voting and the national popular vote, and make it where you can actually rank all the people you want in, and then you empower the third parties. It's great. If you want to hear more about that, so we don't keep droning on about it, listen to last week's episode, episode 12 there with Adam Freeman from Voter Choice MA. So, I mean, in the end, I don't think we learned too much from that election because we know that the Democrats still lose special elections. And we know that the Democrats, even given that amount of money, can't seem to swing a state that was that close. And I don't think we learned anything for 2018 out of this personally.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. It didn't really tell us much. And I mean, yeah, if John Ossoff had won a sizable victory or, lost by 20 points, either of those could have told us something. But there was a wide range of outcomes that didn't really inform us much.
And there we go. I mean, we have we kind of went off the rails there a lot. We talked a lot about the Democratic Party and actually, both parties. And, I personally don't believe in either of them. I don't have a specific third party I
We're
care
all having
about.
an orgy, so it's really going in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, it's the strangest thing. Like, in Massachusetts, you can have an orgy with no contact. All you have to do is take your shoes off. 5 of you in one room with the doors closed. And the doors closed is actually in the law. The doors have to be closed. It's funny.
Which makes me wonder how many orgies the state senate has had.
Yeah,
I think all of them.
with
Every
the number of
session.
people
I
in
think
there.
they're having an orgy probably as we speak.
Right. So I want to actually move on from all of that fun and talk about the Ethereum crash from yesterday. One of the things that I think Alex here is kind of an expert on is things like blockchain technology and kind of the future where all this stuff is going. So he was already scheduled to come in before this happened, and I wanted to make sure we talked about it a little. So, the basics for everyone out there is Ethereum is kind of, it's another blockchain-based cryptocurrency, which really just means it's like Bitcoin for anyone who doesn't know what the other thing I just said is. But you've all heard of Bitcoin at this point. However, it's one that's built on kind of a newer version of the technology with some changes. It's got all these fun things like smart contracts. And Ethereum really isn't actually the currency. It's more the technology and the contracts underlying it. Ether, or ETH, is actually the currency.
Wait, Ether?
Yes. Yes,
But
that's the currency.
Like the
That's
real,
what they've
like,
named
it.
like the Hunter S. Thompson type Ether?
No.
Like,
That's just
Like
literally-
Nas Ether or no?
Okay, because you got me kind of excited there for a second. I was like, that's a word I know.
So yesterday at about 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the GDAX exchange, which is a place where you can put your money in, buy various cryptocurrencies and sell various cryptocurrencies, the price of Ethereum briefly crashed, and by briefly we mean like in a minute it crashed, and in 4 minutes it was back up to where it should have been. So it went down. It went from $319 down to 10 cents, and within 5 minutes back up to 296, and then within an hour or so it was back up above 300 and kind of normalized. In that short amount of time, that itty bitty little window there, 2 trades look to have gone through of sizable dollar figures. One person bought 3,800 full Ether coins at 10 cents, and another person bought 7,200 of them at 10 cents. When you take the 7,200 and you get to the correction, which was only 5 minutes later, and it's back up at $300, that person turned $720 into $2.16 million in about a 5-minute window. But really, his portion of it was in like 10 seconds. And this was based off of stop loss and other fun automated systems built into GDAX that people had automated. So kind of automated systems caused this crash after an initial event, right?
Yeah, so Something that's worth keeping in mind is that these sales don't exist in a vacuum. You're not buying Ethereum from the blockchain itself by sticking money in your computer and encrypting it somehow. What you're doing is you're buying fragments of either from, in this case, the GDAX exchange. And the problem is the same problem that you see when you look at aftermarket trades for any publicly traded company, which is that when you have a low volume of traders, anytime that somebody sells at a crazy loss, it will make the stock look as if something major has happened. And people are going to look around and speculate and everything. But in the case of the market, you have the fact that when trading opens, people look at it and they say that it doesn't make sense. There's no reason for the company stock to have dropped. You aren't seeing a flood of people selling it. You're seeing a handful of investors lose faith. In this case, you had a single investor lose faith. And that doesn't, to
But
me...
lose faith in to the tune of millions of dollars.
Yes. Yeah. Although
It was like $1 million worth of Ether was the initial trigger point that caused this. Someone put a sell
Yeah.
out for $1 million. Currently, at the value that it was when it was at $319, $1 million worth of it, but at a much lower dollar value, which triggered a bunch of people to, their automated systems, which were set to stop them from losing money or cash in when it dropped in value a little. But all those automated systems started fighting, and within seconds, 800 automated trades happened that tanked the price all the way down to 10 cents. It was one initial lost faith person, we believe. I mean, right now we don't have proof that that's what happened, but that's what it looks like. Caused this string of events that literally took seconds, and billions of dollars in value was lost. And then within minutes, billions of dollars of value was back.
I think this is a cautionary trail about algorithmic trading too, because the same things happen on private exchanges. You see Knight's Landing, their bot will misvalue a stock and cost the company, I think it was like $900 million in minutes and seconds. And the same problem you see happen here. It's not that the value of Ethereum was actually 10 cents at any point in time. It's that all the automated systems were happy to say it was.
Right. So where we end up, at least initially, for the investigation of what happened, is GDAX has released a statement, and it starts with this, and it just says, "Our initial investigations show no indication of wrongdoing or account takeovers. We understand this event can be frustrating to our customers. Our matching engine operated as intended throughout this event, and trading with advanced features like margin always carries inherent risk." So what they really were saying is, you all set up a lot of automated stuff on our platform. Our platform did exactly what you told it to, and that's why some of you lost a lot of money and some of you gained a lot of money. Because, one of the things you said earlier that kind of I really think people need to understand is, this wasn't like you were getting money out of the Federal Reserve. This wasn't money that was just being made for you to buy. When that person bought 7,200 of these, it's because someone else had 7,200 of them and had an automated system in place that was allowed to sell that 7,200 without any human intervention. And it was a stop loss order that was trying to, get out as much as it possibly could before the price got too low. But at the speed that this happened, it kind of failed to do that. It was still selling by the time they got that low. And someone was smart enough to have an order at 10 cents. Or two people were smart enough to have an order that said, if this gets down to 10 cents, buy everything you can with every penny I have in my account. Empty my account to buy this. And that's why, to me, it still looks like they're saying there was no wrongdoing here. But, I mean, $3 million just transferred hands when you look at the value of Ether. And $3 million is enough for someone who sees kind of the house of cards that this was to knock it down. So I'm still not convinced that someone didn't do this on purpose. Moving that kind of money is hard. Even with cryptocurrency, it's hard to move that kind of value. And a lot of people that deep in a system like this right now, beyond us, beyond me, beyond a lot of our audience, are highly technical. They understand this to a core, and I'm positive at least a few of them saw what was sitting in front of them as a problem, but weren't saying anything. And someone could have easily seen it and abused it. It just, there's no reason to lose confidence in a way where you want to sell $1 million worth of this at once on this specific exchange, in my mind, without, there being some other, motive. And so I still think that they're going to end up writing this off as nothing to see here, but I just don't believe it.
Yeah, I think that you point out a great example of kind of the risky libertarian tightrope that a lot of the cryptocurrencies walk, which is that you are choosing to forego any Federal Reserve or FDIC protections in exchange for being able to work on the blockchain in a way that is new, convenient, and does not have FDIC protections or the Federal Reserve. One of the more interesting things that we've seen as a result of this crash, I think, is to quote a great tweet, Ethereum is down, Bitcoin is down, Coinbase is down. You saw a lot of the large traders saying, we know something is up. We're going to prevent any buys or sells temporarily. And that right there has instilled a fair amount of fear in the market, because a lot of people are not going to operate a lot of cold wallets. A lot of people a lot of people assume everybody's going to be using this type of hot wallet network. And
for our listeners, cold wallet really means you've got kind of the proof of the money that you have locally. It's yours. It's not out on the cloud. It's not sitting on Coinbase's servers. It's you have it. Whereas Coinbase and other places like that, you've got a hot wallet. This is a wallet that's in the cloud, that exists, that can be pulled from and added to by all these systems and services.
Wait, so is there like a lukewarm wallet?
Well,
is that the one you're sitting on at the moment?
The real analogy is, a dollar bill in your pocket or your bank app telling you have $1. The bank app, that can disappear. Whereas the dollar bill in your pocket is a dollar bill it's a physical thing.
Yeah,
so
I'm like, I used to cash, so this block grant, I don't even know what you're
You could think of a cold wallet as kind of having cash in your pocket. You can carry that on a thumb drive, so technically similar.
So going back to what you said about the FC or
the FDIC,
protections.
Protection.
So I know, like
when a bank gets robbed, the government gives you your money back.
I know what a stock market is, even though I own quite a bit of stock. It's not great. What can you just go back and explain what is the difference between this crypto stock and the protections?
It's not stock.
Well, I mean, stock market-esque.
The coin investing, yeah. So the thing is, if you go to a bank, and if the bank decides that they don't like you and you've given them a lot of money, they can't necessarily say, we don't want to give you the money back, right? And if the bank is having financial troubles, the bank can't say, well, we need this money instead, right? The FDIC ensures that up to a certain amount in any bank account you create, you're guaranteed to get back no matter how bad the bank itself is doing, right? It says you can trust your banks. And this was necessary because around the Great Depression, a lot of banks said, well, we're having a bad day, banks are closed, we need your money. And so a lot of people were just entirely out of their savings, and this total lack of trust in the market led to
people... And they rationed how much you could take at a time, and...
Yeah. So everybody's putting money under the mattress and in their pillowcases.
Yeah, that's why when you anytime you have grandparents and they kind of pass away, you'll find things squirreled away and shelves and cabinets and underneath couches and stuff.
The FDIC also certifies establishments as ones that they will FDIC insure. And so, there's not really a thing like that in the cryptocurrency world at this point, because no one wants a central authority.
Yeah, you say that, but you've got GDAX, you've got Coinbase, and you've got
BTCE, and you've got a very small amount of people that can control everything.
And you've got the Chinese mining majority too. The miners are the people who do the computational work to make the data structure that is a blockchain that says what transactions actually happened. They're the ones who, when you say I want to send this person money, they're the ones who record that the money was changed hands.
They are the ledger, the accountants
And Bitcoin was supposed to be great because we were all supposed to be our own accountants. But in reality, what we're seeing happen is that because people needed to be user friendly, you have a small number of currency changers, a small number of wallets, and a small number of miners. And so what you essentially have is the same economy we had around the 1920s or 1930s with a much smaller market cap, with a few players who get to decide whether or not people can do business with their own money. And I think that while this small Ethereum crash as a result of the huge sell we saw might not be dangerous, I think that large firms preventing people from moving money when they're afraid, I think that the lasting impact of this might be more impactful than people are recognizing right now.
So I was looking at it from the point of view that, our audience might or might not know, Ethereum, they did a hard fork. Something that some people refer to as a hack. I don't. Someone uncovered a bug in the software and happened. I'm not sure how long ago. Was this, almost a year now? 6 months? Somewhere around there. Where the way Ethereum works, it allows you to write these smart contracts. And all that really is it's a piece of code that runs, and for lack of a better term, inside of Ethereum, the blockchain itself has code that can run, and it says if this, do that. And the contract can be anything. It can be if I create this other blockchain, entry, then pay this man this money. The smart contracts can do almost anything. Someone found a way with one of these smart contracts to spend money, then kind of cancel that the money was spent and then spend it again and continue to do that. So on one side, the money he was spending never left that other side, but it kept piling up. So he was double spending. Imagine if you hand someone $1, but that dollar is still in your pocket. And then you hand him that dollar. Now, the dollar, you take it back, it's back in your pocket again, but he's holding $2. Where'd that $2 come from? Out of thin air. Like, how the heck does he have that $2? Well, they figured this out. And they ran up this double spend to the point where they had a wallet with, I believe it was $55 million worth of it. Mm-hmm. And, one of the interesting things about all this cryptocurrency is that the blockchain itself is supposed to be the truth. It is supposed to be a ledger that is unmodifiable. It is the holy grail of truth. It is everything you need to know about everything that's ever happened on this blockchain, with this currency, with this technology. And when you're using this and when you're putting your trust into these systems, you're putting trust into the fact that the things that you do on this chain are the truth. They are recorded and they are what you wanted. And one of the interesting pieces to this is that they decided to fork the blockchain. And what that really means is they basically ignored that $55 million of fake money that just kind of appeared out of nowhere and said, we're going to go on like that never happened, by rolling back to a point on the blockchain before it had happened, and then kind of taking a right turn with the blockchain and ignoring this thing off to the left like it had never happened. And in the cryptocurrency world, a lot of people were on the side of, well, good, that guy didn't deserve $55 million worth of stuff out of nowhere. But what I could see was a majority of people who were scared of the very idea that someone running a blockchain would hard fork it like that. One of the selling points of Ethereum was that they weren't going to do that. They had argued that they weren't going to do that, and then here it was only months in, and here's a hard fork.
So something to note is that a lot of people look at the blockchain, which is the receipt of the function of the cluster, and they view the blockchain itself as the technology, as the consensus. But
it's just a data store, really.
It is the data structure that determines what the group of people agree to be true. And it isn't even the largest blockchain that always wins. If I give you,
it's what the majority of people believe true.
Yeah, but it's easy for me to give you a blockchain longer than the Bitcoin blockchain with every block invalid, and somebody is going to go in and upon seeing that there is an invalid structure to the data structure, because of the way the system's defined, it doesn't matter that it was longer necessarily because it is what because the cluster has agreed the consensus requires other rules, right?
Yep.
So when you're doing business with a blockchain, you're really doing business with the group of miners, right? And in the case of the Ethereum, it wasn't that one person decided I want to remove this transaction. It wasn't that one person came in like the government can do right now and took all the funds from somebody like the government can do right now and did this all unilaterally. The group of the people propping up the entire economy had to vote together and come to a consensus that that they wanted to participate in an economy where that event was not valid in the ledger. And I feel that even though it is scarier from the standpoint that somebody can seize assets and it is not immutable.
It is a small group of people that made that choice in comparison to the amount of actual users. That scared me.
Well, therein lies the danger of working with a blockchain that's small.
Right, at this point, it's a lot larger. But my fear of this event yesterday, when I first heard about it, and everyone starts going nuts, and on Twitter, everyone's yelling and screaming that GDAX were behind it, like so many other exchanges that have failed. They didn't, and they're going to survive this easily. But my fear was, is this going to be another one of those? Because before we had a lot of information. If they hard fork this, Ethereum is done.
Yeah, no.
If they do it again a second time, it's done. Everyone leaves. And they take the tech and they start another group of people who say they're never going to do that. And it becomes harder for anyone to believe a new group of people who say they're not going to do that. So and it just keeps kind of it's a downward spiral if they hard forked this. So yesterday I was really scared, even though I don't hold any ether. I was just scared of what it would do to the technology in the minds of people, the opinion, the trust that was built up at this point, that if they hard forked, we were all in trouble. Because I do see some serious benefit, especially to Ethereum and its smart contract system. This is really neat.
You can say they really got forked.
But they didn't.
I've been waiting for a while.
They haven't even brought up the idea of forking at this point and saying that never happened. And the only people who would really be for it are the people basically on the other end of that 7,200 and 3,800 trade that lost $3 million.
Something that we kind of just hit on right there for a second that I think is really important to call out on right now is that a lot of people right now in the blockchain space look at the success of Bitcoin and think, I'm going to make one of those myself. And they think that all they need is a handful of people with GPUs in the corner, and they can build a system that is as strong as Bitcoin because it works the same way as Bitcoin. But the problem with the hard fork, the fact that so few people could decide for so many, it lies in the fact that you put unilateral trust in the group of the miners for the system. So the worst blockchain situation, I think, is a big blockchain like Ethereum or Bitcoin fails, and you see a lot of small different blockchains. And at that point, not a single one of them deserves any trust. You need
Dogecoin.
You need the trust of the you need the large mining pool for there really to be any safety. So if
it needs to be distributed wide enough that not a small group and not just a few people, that enough people are involved in the decision making that there can't be unilateral decisions. Although Bitcoin, while kind of having that, it still has something you brought up earlier. It has the Chinese mining majority problem. And it's not a problem that Chinese people are mining, and it's not a problem in some kind of xenophobic way or anything. It's literally that a group of people that have kind of agreed to work together have a majority of the mining power, and the fact that they are kind of working together, they can enforce things on the blockchain and on the programmers and everyone else, and at least in theory, but they honestly haven't, because there's a gigantic kind of I would call it internal, but there's a lot of news coverage, fight over the future of Bitcoin, the size of the blocks on the blockchain, and all these other things. And so far, the Chinese position on it hasn't come out as a clear winner yet.
Well, you point out a fear a lot of people have had that I feel might have actually come true recently. I'm not sure if you're aware, but recently China closed down a number of the larger mining shops and consolidated all of the remaining ones into one place where they could be easily supervised. So right now, the Chinese government is really the banker behind a lot of the blockchain technology.
And how big of a percentage of the blockchain do they actually the mining and therefore the transaction verifying and confirming do they actually control?
Well, so I'm not certain at this point. I know that there were concerns about a small group, a subset of the Chinese ones being close to 51%. So I'd wager that if you get if you're considering all of them, it is far too close to 51%. And
the fear at 51% is what?
Well, if more than 51% of the miners were to work together, they could decide that anything makes it into the chain, no matter what it is, and they could mine blocks, paying themselves somebody else's money.
So they could come in and say your transaction is not valid. Like they could literally say we don't like Coinbase anymore, and Coinbase isn't allowed to write to the blockchain anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
They have that level of control at that point.
That's a cartel De Beers would be envious of.
Yes, it is. And so we even with this type of stuff, when you don't have a central government in terms of the underlying technology, there's people here in Massachusetts on the core dev team for Bitcoin. You can still run into the situation where it gets so expensive to work in, I guess I'll call it, this industry, that a government finds a way to get control of it. And so right now we're at a point where the Chinese government could very well be very close to having a majority control over what the truth is on the blockchain, and the ability to stop transactions from being validated, to take a transaction that you're doing and take that money and do something else with it if they feel like it. Really, they have the control to do whatever they want at that point if they come to a consensus in their group to do it.
So we've gone into some pretty advanced ideas on Bitcoin, and I would just wonder, what do either one, Alex or Greg, what do you guys think would be the best resource for somebody who doesn't understand it on this level?
Like a glossary?
Like a glossary, yeah, for a person like myself.
We're definitely going to link to a glossary when this episode goes live. We'll link to one on all the social media and on the website, but...
not to plug my own work, but there's an article I wrote that ended up in the Y Combinator related magazine, Hacker something, and and
we'll link to it.
Yeah, we'll link to it. Yeah. And it's been included in my book as well. It's a fair coverage of who trusts whom when working with Bitcoin, and who can try to screw whom, and what positions are in place to try to prevent that. And the thing to understand about Bitcoin is that it is fundamentally working with an unsolvable problem in computer science, the CAP theorem, which says that no database can be perfect while being up all of the time, right? And the way Bitcoin tries to handle that is by being perfect, but by not being up all of the time. And I think somebody who really wants to get involved in this space, I think what would be very fundamental is for them to understand and differentiate the economics of Bitcoin and why it has money being traded from the actual technology, from the politics. There's a lot that goes into it. It's like running a bank full of people who do not know or trust each other.
So why did you choose to write that book then? What was the motivation behind it? What was your goal?
So I feel that right now, partially in part due to the success of these technologies, and partially because of their reputation, for censorship avoidance. We're seeing a lot of resistance to using these ideas, and we're seeing a lot of people not trying to become familiar with some of these underlying ideas. And in the modern world, where your light bulbs can get hacked and can destroy your home router and can try to attack China and everything, it is irresponsible the degree to which software engineers believe that every device under a person's control should be trusted, and it is irresponsible the degree to which they believe that it is all right to centralize state and to centralize a trust between them. I focus on writing the book because I believe that in the next 10 to 20 years, when the majority of computers will not be desktop computers, or even phones, when the majority of computers will be your fridge, I think that these technologies will become more and more fundamental, and that it is a mistake for developers to try to look the other way. It is akin to saying that COBOL is good enough and you should never learn another programming language.
So I probably need to read your book then.
Well, I mean, 640K is enough for anyone, right?
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we just went pretty deep on Ethereum, Bitcoin, the blockchain. We brought China in, like it seems every argument has China or Russia. One of the two are in every one of these conversations. In the end, I personally, while fearing another hard fork, which luckily doesn't look like it's going to happen, I thought it was hilarious that it crashed. I was laughing the whole time. And while, depending on who it is on the other end of those massive losses, feel bad for, the idea that you can lose that much value almost at no fault of your own so quickly, sucks. But
So
you know what? These automated systems, you need to program them better if you're going to use them, or don't use them.
if somebody was working with Ethereum, I want to clarify, and was not trying to be like a day trader, was not trying to be a high frequency trader, was not trying to game the system to make money and to gamble
This would
with
never
money,
have affected them.
it would never affect them.
Unless the hard fork happened, then it would have at least affected their trust in the system.
Yeah, but if you look at the graph, it's like a straight line, and there's a dip, and it comes almost all the way back up. And if you put your thumb over that dip, if you're a consumer who wasn't trading,
It would have been a miracle for you to trade during that time period.
Yeah,
It was seconds. I mean, sure, it was minutes for it to get all the way back up, but it was seconds that it actually got down that low.
And if you did make the trade and didn't look at the cost of the coin when you were selling it, that's just negligence in your report.
Yeah, you got what you deserved at that point. I mean, really, you should understand these new technologies. I still say there's going to be a lot more fallout from this, though. There is currently a request for an AMA from whoever made all of that money and made that transaction. I believe they're asking for the person who did the 3,800, but for all we know, the same person did the 3,800 and the 7,200. I would love to see that person show up and do an AMA. Use a throwaway. Use a VPN. I don't care. You don't need to identify yourself. I just want to have some answers as to how you got away with $2 or possibly $3 million. I'm a sucker for a bank robbery story, right? I mean, aren't we all kind of?
Oh, I think so.
You in particular, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, you might have a special affection.
I do like a bank robbery story. Don't get me wrong, but
Something completely, but not completely unrelated to the bank robbery story and blockchain stuff. All of the WannaCry worms that have been going in and encrypting all the computers for like health computers in England, have been getting all the companies in Europe and stuff. It's been found that the software used for it was the same software leaked by the shadow brokers. And the way that we've been tracing all this intrigue was the fact that it used the blockchain, which people seem to think gives them magical anonymity, but it doesn't, and we have traced it back to North Korea.
Yes.
So, if you ever want to like look into a good bank robbery story, look into the story of how North Korea used some borrowed American tech to rob most of Europe.
Yeah. Or, the last great Swift bank heist, Swift being a network used to transfer money between, banking institutions is believed to have been North Korea. So a lot of people ask, where's North Korea getting all of its money? And you can say, well, some of it from China, and for a while, China buying their coal and all that other stuff. But a surprising amount of their income, I bet at this point, is through all the cybercrime. It's estimated that their hacking, group is 7,700 hackers strong, and that they run daily training and testing and nonstop to get these people up to the highest levels. And that's an interesting twist on how to get your GDP up when you can't even afford to feed your people.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but all of this really, really puts me in a sense of associated awe about in modern days how many layers of abstraction there are between actual value and money, and how some people can just flip some bits somewhere and create and take value from the other.
Just out of nowhere, yeah.
And that's not even really that new a thing. The idea of manipulating the value of stocks dates back to, well, stocks.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's become the so much more sophisticated that very few people even understand half of what's going on, which admittedly was also true at that time because the standards of what people are expecting and looking for have changed. But now we have a myriad of ways that people can approach it and do something that, a few dozen other people would even understand what they actually did. And a few thousand realized that they got screwed, but don't even know what actually happened.
The blockchain has definitely increased the gap between the people who understand various crimes that might happen in that specific financial world and the people who wouldn't understand it at all. Like, the amount of people who can claim to actually understand the blockchain is unbelievably small compared to the amount of people who can actually claim to understand stocks, right? So I mean, and maybe that's just because they haven't tried to understand it yet, but still the numbers are way smaller. So when it comes to crime related to, these cryptocurrencies and the internet and all that type of stuff, like, the amount of people who actually can even track it down and trace it and everything is so much smaller.
And of course, we've had, decades or centuries to build up ways of addressing the various financial crimes that people have come up with involving stocks, whereas cryptocurrencies are, like a decade old. So we don't really have that wellspring of history.
Although we are lucky that a lot of people believe Bitcoin to be anonymous in some way, and it is truly not, and it is expressly developed not to be. I mean, when you look at how it's been designed, it records as much as it can about what happened, and the economy that's built up around it really does the same. Even if you go to Coinbase or anything else, you can't transfer a lot of money in or out of Coinbase until you've sent them a picture of your photo ID, and then they make sure that they know every transaction that went into the blockchain on their end is tied straight to that ID. So if you were to do something with your address from Coinbase, they would literally send the picture of your ID to the FBI and say he did it, or at least talk to that guy. So it's not anonymous, but a lot of people think it is, which is leading to a lot of them getting caught. There's technology that exists to help you anonymize it. You can tumble your coins, you can use the blender and all these other tricks, but unless you're seriously helped by someone who knows how to do all of that, just going up, getting an account and sending, Bitcoin is not anonymous, and don't believe it is.
Yeah, and it's one of the craziest things too in how anti-anonymous it is that many people aren't aware that it is a crime to buy and sell Bitcoin to people without knowing who they are, and without going through some due diligence at some point.
In the U.S., and this is because it was classified as a commodity.
Yeah. So what you have is a lot of people who want to use Bitcoin to cover their tracks, and you see lots and lots of small purchases of Bitcoin and lots of small incomes of cash through other means. And at that point, it does not matter where the money was going to. It doesn't matter if you were committing crime or not. The very paper trail that exists on the books is itself evidence of you being an illegal currency exchanger, and you will go to prison just for that.
Right. And you know, the one thing that I want to make very clear to people is that if for some reason you do need your anonymity, there are ways that you can study up where you can use Bitcoin and Ether and all these other fun things anonymously. You can get away with it. You just have to study.
Yeah, I just like anything else where there's a lot of excitement, there's going to be hustlers in any scene. So you have to be careful to make sure that what you're buying is actually going to be okay for you.
All right. So I think that covers a lot of these topics. I'm really happy you came, Alex. I hope you can actually come back. That was great. I would say to everyone out there that wants to know more about a lot of this stuff, check out Alex's book. You can get it on Amazon if you search for Alex Kyte, and that's Kyte. And the book is titled...
The book is titled "The Keys to the Kingdom." If you're interested in seeing what's in it before you commit to it, it is a Creative Commons work that is also available on archive.org, and I welcome anybody who recognizes any formatting errata or anything. I'm sure there's a bunch to send me an email, and I'll make sure that you get a thanks. Thank you.
Great. There we go, everyone. So that is going to wrap episode 13. Over the next few weeks, we've got some really interesting guests coming. And again, as always, our show is funded through our wonderful patrons on Patreon. So thanks to the so far 5 of you since we launched a week ago that have signed up. But we definitely are going to need a few more of you, so get on there if you can. The link's on our website, the link's on our social, and I'm sure links to that and everything else are about to play because our end credits include all of our social media. So go interact with us if you want. We will respond. And thanks for listening. All right. Bye, everyone.
The GreggHoush Show was created by GreggHoush, executive produced by co-host Derek Gowres, and co-hosted by Kayla Avery. Other contributors include producer and writer Anna Jeffrey, co-host producer David McGuffin, and writer-engineer Robert Tortora. Theme music for this show was produced and recorded by Geneva de Colbert. Our interns include co-host Casey McLaughlin, writer-engineer Alec Greeny, writer Maddie Locicero, and associate producer, writer, and announcer William Kennedy. You're listening to New Revolutionary Radio, your call to action. Thank you for listening. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GreggHoush Show and on Instagram at GreggHoush. If you like what you've heard and want to be a part of it, check out patreon.com/GreggHoush Show. In exchange for funding our programming, you gain access to exclusive content such as uncut editions of our podcast. We have new episodes every Thursday night. We hope you listen in.